Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Cox. I'm a member of the Netcapital team. Let's allow one moment for everybody to settle in. Thanks. All right, I see a couple still trickling in, but let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. I see a little hello came in. Hey there. Welcome again. Today, I'm excited to welcome Sherry Noonan with Rialto. As always, Rialto, this company is actively raising capital on the Netcapital platform. I'm adding a link into the chat feature now. You can click that link to go to the offering page and review, or you can go directly to netcapital.com/companies/Rialto. Or you can go to netcapital.com and search RIALTO. A few quick housekeeping items. Please do use the Q&A functionality built into Zoom. I know there's also a chat feature, but Q&A makes it so much easier to track your questions as they come in and answer as many of them as possible. And please do ask those questions. We want to keep this interactive. This really is for you to get your questions answered. So please do engage with the Q&A feature in Zoom. All right, with all that being said, please join me in welcoming Rialto to the stage. Come on in, Sherry. Tell us a little bit about what you're building.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to everyone today. So my name is Sherry Noonan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rialto Markets. Rialto Markets is a FINRA registered broker-dealer, and we also operate an SEC recognized alternative trading system. So, I can get into a little bit more about what we do and who we are as we go through this evening.
Love that. Thanks for that. Let's give people a better understanding of the team, who you are and the team around you, and then we'll start getting into problem solution and things like that. So I'd love to learn more about who's Sherry.
Absolutely. So who I am, I grew up really in electronic trading. So myself and my two co-founders, Joel and Rob, we met at Instinet, an electronic trading firm back in the 90s. And we were really building out electronic trading solutions when we were really fortunate to be building those out when equities were going from voice to electronic way back in the 1990s. Then in the 2000s, Rob went into fixed income, but Joel and I went to, and actually that comes full circle, and about 20 years later, Joel and I went to Goldman and Citi, respectively, while those two firms bought platforms to integrate into their franchises. So I went to Goldman, and Goldman had purchased a firm called Spearleads and Kellogg. Spearleads and Kellogg had a platform called Ready, and I helped Ready get integrated into the Goldman franchise. Spent a while at Goldman, worked on some alternative trading systems that were being built out at the time, also worked as a sales trader, did some other things within the Goldman franchise, and then went to Deutsche Bank as the COO of Global Electronic Trading, also as the COO of Global Equity Derivatives and the COO of Global Equity Trading. Joel went to Citadel and also worked in foreign exchange. By about 2015, 2016, equities was a very mature market, really not much more to do in terms of innovation there. So we came and we formed Rialto Markets, really looking for markets that had a lot of friction still in them and really needed a lot of innovation. And we found private markets, which was really fantastic. And so we founded Rialto Markets, and there was a really interesting nexus going on that was very similar, analogous to electronic trading back in the 90s. There was sort of this confluence of market structure changes in the form of the Jobs Act and some other changes that were going on, technology changes, which I can get into, go down a rabbit hole or not, in terms of both just people becoming more comfortable in terms of investing online, but also blockchain-based securities, which we spent 2 years working with the SEC and FINRA and getting approval to be able to work with those types of securities. And then just people in general becoming more comfortable with investing in private companies and companies staying private longer. So sort of a confluence of all of those events really made it a really great time to come and build out the infrastructure for private markets.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned a couple of folks that are on your team as well, Joel, Rob, Jim. Can you tell us a little bit more about those folks as well?
Absolutely. So Joel Steinmetz, he's our COO. He has about more experience than me. He has about over 30 years experience in electronic trading at Citi, Citadel, and a number of other places, also in foreign exchange. Rob Noonan, he was at Instinet, also in fixed income. He was in fixed income working in pricing, which is really, really helpful on our alternative trading system in terms of pricing illiquid securities. Jim Caboy is our Chief Compliance Officer. He was at LiquidNet, which was an alternative trading system in the equities space, and is our Chief Compliance Officer now. And we also, actually, our entire team has, everyone on our team, nearly everyone on our team has over 25 years of experience at traditional Wall Street firms.
Love that. And because the team is so mission critical to the ultimate success. So I really appreciate that deep dive there. Okay, so for those who are not as familiar with the space as you and I might be, can you tell us about what is the problem that Rialto is solving? And then I'd love, if it's possible, to focus on the problem first, and then we can dig into the solution. But if it makes it easier, you can kind of go problem solution back and forth.
Let's talk about the problem. So the problem is multifold. First of all, in private markets, there really is no infrastructure in terms of the investors being able to access deal flow and issuers being able to access deals. And so there's really no infrastructure around that. So if you think about public markets, obviously you've got exchanges, you've got IPOs that come to market. However, in private markets, there's a lot of opaqueness. And secondarily, there's also a lot of complexity, a lot of rules and regulations. And so when you're thinking about bringing an offering to even accredited investors, there are lots of rules that can be very confusing and very difficult. And so you never know as an issuer if you're tripping over some sort of complexity. The third issue is there's no off-ramp. So when you have a private company, as we know, companies are staying private much longer than they used to. It used to be, when Amazon went public, I think it was 3 years, after it was formed, very quickly. Now companies are staying private 9, 12 years just because there's so much private capital that's out there. And because there are a lot of costs involved with going public, and there are lots of hurdles to go over in terms of being a public company. So companies are choosing to stay private a lot longer. As they stay private a lot longer, and as they avail themselves of some of these new market structure rules that allow them to have the public invest, retail investors want an off-ramp. VCs might be aware that, there's a 7 to 12 year lockup, but retail investors, they need to, pay for college. Their car breaks down. They need to be able to get that exit ramp. So there's no exit ramp. So we really look at it holistically and say, how can we build an infrastructure for the private markets that really lets companies stay private in a much the same way, and choose to go public at the right time, and not choose to go public because they have to, for some other reason.
That is so important. Once upon a time, companies would go public with much lower valuations after being in the industry for much shorter amount of time. And now these incredibly long durations, they're there is interest in liquidity in these private investments. Absolutely. And with super funds and more super funds and even bigger, more established super funds, I think we're going to continue to see, potentially we'll continue to see companies stay private. Thank you for doing such a good job focusing on the problem. Let's do solution. How does Rialto help solve some of those problems?
Absolutely. So in the primary market, we assist companies with providing them with a self-hosted solution. And we even tie in with other partners in the ecosystem, but really give them sort of a railway system. Someone actually noted today, and I thought was a great way of sort of describing it, sort of the AWS. So we tie into payment rails, we tie into escrow agents, we tie into other investment banks and investment funds, so that you can access other capital, but it's the issuer site. It looks like the issuer site. So we allow the issuer to have their own site, their own presence, but it's us sort of powering it behind the scenes. That's in the primary space. And that's really for larger raises. That's really for raises that are, 20, anywhere from 10, 20, 50, $75 million. In the secondary side of, once you've raised your capital, then you'll come onto the alternative trading system, and you can allow your issuers to actually monetize those shares. And that's actually a selling point for the primary. If you have your shares listed on the secondary site, you can say people are more likely to purchase it in the first place because they know that they have the chance of selling it. And in the case of Regulation A shares, as soon as they're freely tradable, as soon as they're purchased. So, and what we do on our side is we make sure everything's taken care of from a blue sky perspective. Everything's taken care of, that they're freely tradable. There's no restrictions. There's no lockups. Everything's taken care of, so that the issuer doesn't have to worry that some state regulator is going to come back, or the SEC is going to come back and say you have to rescind this trade. That's what, I used to work on the equity swaps desk, and that's what we were always terrified that, we always had to go through a checklist whenever we did a trade, because we were worried that a regulator would come back and say, this is recharacterized as something else. That's what the ATS does, is make sure that everything's done within the regulatory box, and it meets all of the regulatory rules, so that it's free and clear.
I'm hearing regulatory, compliance, and legal all balled up together. I'm excited. I imagine the attendees are equally excited. And we're getting some really exciting questions coming in. So as much as I want to keep on track, we got to talk about market, we got to talk about revenue model, but maybe we start addressing some of these questions.
Sure.
Awesome. So first one that came in. So looking forward to hearing Sherry speak about their ATS secondary trading platform, as this seems a very exciting time for private securities and crowdfunding. How easy is it for competitors to get approval for an ATS? Maybe I can couch that question so we can check two boxes at once. Can you talk about the competitive landscape a little bit, and then we could talk about ease of entry, barriers to entry? Sure.
So this is a somewhat complex topic. So there's two parts to the business. There's the primary space. So we are FINRA registered broker dealer, but I actually want to focus on the secondary market, because that's, becoming a broker dealer is definitely a process in and of itself. But really, where we think the long game is in the alternative trading system. And our team has built and operated about 9 alternative trading systems. To give you sort of scope and scale, there are about 55 alternative trading systems in the US right now. So we've built and operated about 9 of those. So it took us a year to get our first mandate. Now, that mandate, it's important to note, when you go to the SEC, first you go to FINRA to get an alternative trading system, because that's under the auspice of FINRA. However, you do that in conjunction with the SEC. You file paperwork with the SEC. It took us about a year to get that first mandate. The mandate is very specific in terms of product and what you're able to do. So we got the mandate to be able to operate across private markets. In 2018, we became much more educated on digital securities, blockchain-based securities. And we thought there was a lot, there were use cases around blockchain-based securities and things that we could do in that space. And I'll get into that in just a moment, but we really thought that there was a lot of space for that. So we went to FINRA and the SEC and worked with them to expand our mandate into blockchain-based securities. Now, note, we already had approval to operate, and we actually were operating. We had a production ATS, we had clients, and we were in production. It took us 2 years to get that approval to expand our mandate. So it was a lengthy process to be able to expand our mandate. And the reason it was lengthy is because, as you probably have seen in the news, the SEC was concerned about blockchain-based securities, digital assets, and digital security specifically, and very specific issues around digital securities, around custody, for example. And these are all things that we worked with the SEC on, and that we worked through the issues. So that, if you read the news today, Gemini just received approval for a digital ATS. It took them 30 months to get that approval. So they had been working on it for a very, very long time. So, when we were working through the process, we knew there was quite a stack of applicants. And over that 2-3 years, a lot of people just said, I'm going to not do this. This isn't worth it, because it costs money. It costs money. It costs lawyers and time. And so a lot of people just threw in the towel and said, I'm not going to do this. Very few, I would say most people did not go through the entire process. And those that did, it took us 2 years. It took Gemini, 30 months. Now we're seeing it's going to take 2.5-3 years for people who are starting now.
That was super helpful. And thanks for sharing that. So, pretty significant barriers to entry, which I think a lot of folks will be excited to hear about. More good questions coming in. I don't know if we're going to be able to stay on our traditional trajectory. Let's just keep the party going here. I'm not super familiar with this term, but I imagine you might be. Do you take on ARS stock? And then secondly, how do you clear the securities? Are you familiar with that?
Oh, let me look at the ARS stock. So let me.
Yeah,
I don't know about ARS stock, but I can talk about, let me talk about clearing the securities.
perfect.
So I'll borrow a term from Joel. So where we spent most of our time was actually in the process for clearance and settlement and custody. And really, that's where we spent our time with the SEC and with FINRA, and making sure that everyone was comfortable with how we were going to manage that process. And really, how we manage that process is through a series of messaging and communications and confirmations, both prior to the transaction, prior to the order even being accepted by the alternative trading system, by us, and then post the transaction. So prior to the order being taken, what we do is we're connected into different payment rails and different transfer agents and different custodians. And what we'll do is we will check to make sure that the shares, whoever puts in the order, that the shares are freely tradable. There's no seasoning, there's no restrictions on them, that they're freely tradable, they're unencumbered, no one's put a lien on those securities, so that they can be traded. And then we will put the order on the system. For the buyer, we'll check to make sure they have the money. And then once the transaction occurs, then that kicks off a series of messaging that allows that process of clearance and settlement to occur. And so that's how that works.
No, that was really good.
Fred, I hope that answered your question.
I think it did. More really cool questions. This might be actually for us, I'm not sure. How do you differentiate between Rialto and King's Crowd? I think that might.
Yeah, we're actually partners. So yeah, King's Crowd provides research. So King's Crowd's amazing and provides research on the market. We obviously do a lot of research on the market because we're involved in the market, but we work very closely with King's Crowd, and but we partner with them and work very closely with them. So they're in our sector, meaning we work in the same space, but they do a different, they work more in the research space, and we work in the broker dealer services and secondary trading space.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with King's Crowd, great resource for anyone learning about opportunities to invest in private securities. Obviously, we're big fans here at Netcapital. They raise over $1 million on our platform, and they've gone on to do really great things with that capital. So you should definitely check that out. What do you intend to do differently than what other players have done? I'm not familiar with these. Securitized or T0.
Yep, know them well. So Securitized and T0, the way I'll describe it is we utilize blockchain-based securities in the background. So actually, a lot of the issuers we work with don't even realize we're utilizing blockchain-based securities. So that's the first thing. We don't really talk about it a lot, except when we talk about barriers to entry in terms of the market. But when we're talking to issuers, we don't say, you're utilizing blockchain-based securities, or we're tokenizing this, or we're digitizing this. Now, we do work with some issuers who are specifically in this space, but most issuers that we're working with are simply looking to raise money, and they're looking to raise money at a price point that is competitive. And through the technology that we've got and the partners that we work with, and that combination of blockchain-based securities, that gives us a price point that is effective. If you think about it, being able to run a cap table of 10,000 investors for a $10 million investment and run all of that messaging and dividends and everything else, that would be challenging on legacy technology. It's less challenging. It's more cost effective in newer technology. So we really approach it more from a cost effectiveness than from a digital security standpoint. That's sort of the first thing. The second thing is we specifically are starting from coming from electronic trading. We're specifically coming from a scale perspective. We're starting from looking at Regulation A and Regulation CF securities, and looking at securities that are taking a note from the Industrial Revolution, things that we can scale and easily get on the system and replicate. We're not looking to be a Carta or a Forge, where you have to get 20 lawyers in a room to get a unicorn syndicate done, because that's not. And yet that's not scalable. I think in the future that might be scalable, but you still have too many covenants and too many things to deal with. You still have too many hands that have to be in the pot to deal with that. We want to deal with securities that are scalable and that don't have restrictions, and that you can just put on the system and transact. And so that's how we're looking to be different and looking to differentiate ourselves. I hope, Dominic, I answered your question.
I think you must have. That was quite thorough. Thanks for that question. I can't believe time flies when you're having fun. We're almost at the halfway mark, so I have to remind folks we're talking with the team over at Rialto, Sherry Noonan. As always, they're actively raising capital on the Netcapital platform. You can go to netcapital.com and search Rialto, or you can click this link that I am trying to add into chat, but having far too much trouble doing. Or you can go directly to netcapital.com/companies/Rialto, RIALTO. And there's the link in chat. Struggle was real. Okay, continuing along. what can you tell us about the companies and the sectors Rialto Markets are involved in and the contracts pipeline? Anything you could share about that?
Absolutely. Our contracts pipeline at the end of the year was over 700 million. I think I can speak confidently that we're approaching $1 billion. I'm sort of looking over here to my, yes, we're approaching $1 billion, if not over $1 billion, but I can confidently say we're approaching $1 billion in contracts. The sectors that we're in, so that's within Regulation A, Regulation A plus, Regulation CF, and Regulation D primary raises. The sectors that we're in are EV, clean energy, cannabis, medtech. We have a very strong medtech pipeline, real estate. Anything I'm forgetting? Gaming. And I think those are the big ones.
Perfect. Wow. Congratulations. Oh, am I muted still?
Nope, you're good.
I thought I was muted. Congratulations. That's great. That's great traction so far. I normally don't move this quickly, but I really want to get to as many as possible. So hopefully this isn't overwhelming, guys. I read that in Forbes that private securities reached 7 trillion in 2031, and they forecast this to reach 30 trillion by 2030. And crowdfunding was up by over 1,000%. So how is Rialto Markets doing with signaling commercial contracts for 2022 in this space, and what are its total value to date? So signaling commercial contracts and total value to date.
So yeah, so we just went through that. So that was the 732 at the end of the year, $1 billion. And yeah, the markets really exploded. I would say that, you know, really the second half of last year, the market really started exploding. And one other thing I'd like to say in terms of this market specifically, it really seems like issuers are becoming very educated on their options and using Regulation CF and Regulation A plus as building blocks in terms of capital formation, rather than saying, you know, I'm going to do a seed round, a friends and family seed, series A, B, C, D. Now it's sort of Lego blocks of, you know, I need 5 million, I'm going to do a Reg CF. I need 50 million, I'm going to do a Regulation A. And so it's a really interesting shift, and it's happening so quickly that, you know, not a week goes by that I don't get a call from, you know, a private equity firm or a venture capital firm or even an investment bank that's saying, you know, we're noticing this like rapid shift in markets, in what's going on. And so everyone's really noticing it. And I think it's really exciting because I think it's just opening up optionality for founders and for companies in terms of capital formation. So I think it's positive for the market.
That's great. That helped us get to the market size question. I think that's really, really helpful. Thanks for sharing those details. We are definitely seeing some exciting growth within our industries. And I think you're right, liquidity is going to be an important part of that conversation going forward. Can securities on the secondary platform become tokenized and traded on the blockchain? I think maybe we can keep that one relatively short. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So we are blockchain agnostic. We integrate into several different blockchains. So absolutely.
As easy as that. Just good old fashioned yes. You don't get those very often on these types of calls. Okay, and we got some feedback, alternative reporting. We got some details. Thank you so much for that. ARS is auction rate security, a type of variable rate investment, generally a bond or long-term maturity or preferred share of stock. Thanks. You always learn something new every day. And I don't know if I want to get to this one quite yet. It's another conversation about competitors. I think we've done a lot of competitive landscape stuff. Let's go with this one here. This is such a large market. Surely you're going to move quickly from Reg CF raise to institutional investors. You know, be thoughtful about how much broadcasting you can do about that. Why do you have such a market advantage? I think you talked about kind of barriers to entry a little bit, but do you want any other reasons that you'd like to point to why you've been able to have such a solid market advantage over other players in the space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that these are very, very early days in terms of this market. It really reminds me of the early to mid 90s and what happened for equities, for equities moving voice to electronic again. And what really happened was there was a ton of proliferation of platforms, of solutions, and then there was a lot of consolidation. And so I really think what's going to happen over 2022 is there's going to be a lot of proliferation, there's going to be a lot of consolidation, and we definitely know that some larger players are paying attention. Don't think that they're going to participate. We know from larger players that we're close to that they're still in a wait and see moment. But we do think, we're picking our spot. We know what we're good in, and we also know what we're going to choose not to participate in, or not going to choose to play, what sandbox we're not going to play in. And so that's, we're going to play to our strengths, and what our strengths are is deploying technology to operate at scale, and that's really what we're focusing on.
That's great. That's great. And I just saw one of the attendees took the initiative, joined the Rialto family by investing through Netcapital. So I want to welcome them to the family. It's always love to see that real time. As a retail investor, how would I fit into your ATS ecosystem? What are the main benefits for me as I own shares in companies from a number of Reg CF and A+ raises? Great question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to track with the questions. I'm sorry. Do I scroll down on the question?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
we're there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
this
is this
one is
729, 727? I'm just trying to read.
27.
Okay, there we go. Frank. Okay, perfect. Hi, Frank. So as a retail investor, how would I fit into your ATS ecosystem? Perfect. So the way that our ATS works is slightly different than some other ATSs. So there are ATSs where you can bring shares, and a lot of these, some ATSs that are more venture-backed, unicorn focused, where an investor owns shares in that company, and you bring those shares to the ATS and you try and sell them, and the ATS will try and sell them. We do not work like that. The way we work is we work with the issuer, and the issuer places or lists on the ATS like an exchange. And the reason that we do that is for a lot of reasons. One, if an investor sells shares in a company and the company doesn't know about it, it can mess with the options price. It can mess with a lot of things. It can have unintended consequences. Let's just say that. And so we want to be fully aligned with the issuer, and we think that it's in the issuer's best interest to allow their investors to monetize their investment. So we think as this market evolves and matures, that issuers are going to want to do this, and this is going to be quite commonplace. So bringing this full circle, the way that we work is issuers list or place on our ATS. Right now, we have a number of issuers that do have their listings on the ATS. We're waiting for, if those issuers and the investors of those issuers want to sell, they come on and place those sell orders. It's a lit order book, meaning they put the order on, it shows up on the order book, someone wants to buy it, they put a buy order in, and it can be automatically executed. Once we get a match, then all of the settlement happens. Not really settlement, but all of the dance happens in terms of the buys, the shares changing hands and the money changing hands. But once we get a certain amount of issuers on the system, then we're going to open up to the general public. But right now we're keeping it contained to issuers and the investors of the issuers. So if you own shares and you would like to sell those shares, we can talk, and I'm happy to talk to issuers and try and get them to come onto the system. We also work with certain platforms and have all of their shares. We work with marketplaces. If you think about fractionalized marketplaces, like the fractionalization of everything, you've got fractional art and shoes and cars and everything. We work with those marketplaces and basically allow them to have access to sell all of those different shares through our ATS. So depending on what you own, it really depends on the issuer. That's what I'm trying to say, Frank, and I'm not saying it very eloquently, so I apologize.
No, I think you got to it. Absolutely. Frank can say if that made sense or not. I think it made sense. So when the shares are ultimately exchanged hands, how does Rialto make money? What's the revenue model?
So in the primary space, it's success based. So we only make money when we help the companies raise money. In the secondary space, as I mentioned, we work with the issuers. So there's a small listing fee, and then there's also a commission. And then on what I call the marketplace business, which is where the fractionalization of everything, we offer sort of this white label product. That's almost like a SaaS model where we charge a monthly fee, because if you think about it, if these marketplaces are offering, buy a cup of wine, or buy, not a cup of wine, I'm being a little facetious, but, buy $100 of, a wine or art or shoes, for them to be able to list every single one of those issues would be cost prohibitive. So what we do is we charge more like a SaaS model, where it's a monthly fee for them to be able to list all of their securities via our platform. So it's really three different revenue models, which is helpful because it diversifies the revenue streams.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I think everybody's seeing the fractionalization, securitization of everything. It's really interesting. If you haven't seen the subtypes of things that were just mentioned, they are out there. They are out there.
Well, and we're really not waiting. It's really interesting to watch the SEC and all of the things that are going on with the SEC. We've been approached by a lot of digital asset companies really trying to future-proof their business, because the SEC is saying, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. So, I do expect 2022 is going to be the year where there's going to be a framework put together and put forth. And I do think that our ATS will at least there will be a stripe of things that are not under our auspice now that will fall under our auspice. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yes, we will be watching very closely as well. We will continue to keep an eye on those developments. Okay, that was great. That was great to better understand the revenue models. Can any private company's shares be traded on the ATS, or does it only apply to companies in certain industries?
Nope, as long as it's a security. So anything that's a security can trade on the ATS. And as long as the issuer comes to us. So as long as the issuer comes to us and as long as it's a security.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a potential opportunity if you own securities in some issuer and you would like to have some type of alternative trading built into that, you might be able to coordinate with you, Sherry, to encourage them to join the team. Okay.
Please reach out.
Love that. Love that. I think we're doing better on time. Oh, nope, just kidding. I just didn't see those last full questions. Okay, we're going to keep the party going. There are 27 million private companies in the US. How long before this becomes the norm for exciting private companies to trade shares on it? And so, sorry, this is the 726 question. How long do you believe before it's the norm for private companies to trade shares on regulated secondary trading platforms? How large do you see this market becoming? So a little bit more market size stuff. And over 5 years, will this include things like NFTs? And if so, how can this be de-risked for everyone? Love that question.
I mean, this is exactly what I was talking about, the NFTs and NFTs falling under the auspice of securities. You know, to me, NFTs sort of, it's a flashback to ICOs in some ways, certain NFTs, not all NFTs, but I do think, you know, it is quite astounding. The fact that there are 27 million private companies, that's pretty astounding, one. Two, you know, I talked to so many founders, and there are so many different use cases. I talk to founders who say, you know, I'm in construction. The only way that I can get financed are through these really, you know, difficult bank loans, and being able to construct different ways to get financing that's appropriate, that can be, you know, that can be financed through private markets in different ways. So what I get excited about through the evolution of the private markets is there's just different capital formation coming to bear. And that's what I think is happening much more rapidly than it has happened in really the you know, recent past. So I think the next 18 to 24 months is going to be a really exciting time for private markets.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Somebody's asking about specific issuers, Reg A or Reg CF offerings that you might have worked with in the past and how successful they were. I'm not sure if you would even be able to answer that question, but it was posed.
Absolutely. So actually, Atlas Motor Vehicles, we helped them raise $5 million in 6 weeks. They actually just launched a Reg A with us today, which is exciting. City Zenith Clean Energy, we're doing a $15 million Reg A plus with them. I'm trying to think of who else. Apis Corp. We launched that about 3 weeks ago. We've got about 7 that are launching, but not all of them are public yet, so I can't speak to all of them. Any others that I can mention?
That's pretty solid lineup so far.
Mission First Capital. So those are all ones that I can mention.
Love that. Yeah, I always want to be delicate. I don't want to put anybody in an awkward situation. There's certain things that just can't be shared at certain times. So, but really appreciate that transparency there for that question. So good question. I think a really solid answer. A couple more. I think we're doing okay. When do you expect the ballpark timeline is for the platform to be ready for trading, and will it be limited to US citizens only? Good question.
Absolutely. So the platform's ready for trading now. We've got 3 issuers on right now. It's open globally. That's one of the cool things. And that's what I find super exciting about the platform. We can take on international investors, which I find super exciting. Now, with that, the SEC is fine with international investors coming in and investing in US securities as long as they're properly under the securities framework. However, there are 5 jurisdictions, one of them being the US, called the Five Eyes, that have their own investor protections. The UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, did I say? I can't remember the fifth. Oh, and the US. So for those other 4, we work with on the ground broker dealers to make sure that we're meeting the investor protection rules. Otherwise, and for certain other jurisdictions as well, we'll work with on the ground broker dealers. But we can take international investors.
That's awesome. I do want to take a moment and thank everybody for these very thoughtful questions. This is the type of interaction that I'm hoping for every time. So I love, and I want to thank you guys for coming with these very thoughtful questions. Keeping the party going, how will KYC requirements, affect your site? If you're offering restricted, example Reg A, and other securities, how can they be offered to the general public?
So basically the way that the KYC requirements work is, why don't I go through both on the primary side and the secondary side. So on the primary side, when you're looking to invest in a security, you would click an Invest Now button, and then it would lead you through a questionnaire. And basically that questionnaire would say, what's your name? When were you born? What's your verification? It would either take you through like a Jumio, biometric verification, or just typing in numbers, lack of a better term. So a series of both suitability questions as well as identification verification questions. Then you would be led through, are you an accredited investor? Are you not? And you would get to the payment rails, decide if you want to pay by credit card, everything like that. Look at the subscription agreement, sign it, hit submit. At that point, the information comes to us on the primary side, comes to us. We review it for suitability and for KYC AML. We look for politically exposed persons, for any adverse media, for obviously any sanctions lists, all of that. If all of that is passed, then you can invest in the investment. When the money comes in, then you can invest in, then the money is released to the issuer and the shares are released to you. If obviously you're on a sanctions list or you don't pass that, then the money is returned to you and you don't pass your given the reason why you didn't pass AML KYC. In the secondary trading market, in much the same way, you're going to be led through an onboarding document, which is pretty much the exact same questionnaire. It's suitability around investment, your level of, are you a beginner? Are you advanced in terms of investment? We do not do options. We do not trade on margin. We don't do anything like that. But it also has the standard KYC, know your customer, or sanctions and politically exposed persons and adverse media checks as well. David, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was really great. And you defined KYC, and for those who are unfamiliar, AML is just anti-money laundering, another check required by some firms like ours. Great detail.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So, I just want to be clear, David. So in terms of our site, when you will come on to the secondary trading, we're not going to be soliciting, for all of the securities. It's going to have to be behind a wall, and so subscribers will have to go through that. So we're not going to be we do not solicit to the general public. I just want to be clear on that. Sorry.
No, thanks for adding that.
I've been in the securities industry too long.
No, I think that's a great detail to add. That's important. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, cool. Last couple of minutes here. I've heard you talk about the power of the pack over a lone wolf. Can you expand on that theory and why it's important to grow a community as an issuer? Great question.
Yeah, and I love this one. So one thing that we've seen that's really interesting is companies, from their formation, really saying, I'm going to be raising money from the community, really as part of my DNA. And as part of that, the investor community is going to help me grow and really be part of my journey, right? And so as I move forward, they're going to give me feedback on my product. They're going to help support me. They're going to talk about me in cocktail parties. They're going to help the brand build. And it's going to be a much louder presence than if, I had one or two investors, especially if I'm if I'm a consumer facing product. And so we've seen, specifically for Reg CF and Reg A plus products or securities, that those companies that are consumer facing, those companies that have a community around them, that they do quite well, and that it becomes sort of a virtuous cycle where you do need to advertise to get people to invest in your offering, but you also then are building your brand at the same time, and you're really building your brand for the long run. Because then as you're getting investors in your company, you're then getting brand ambassadors in your company. And so that's what I find so exciting is we're really seeing a new type of company build up. And I'll actually point to Atlas. Atlas is a great example of this. They've done an amazing job, and it's not really intuitive because they do electric vehicle company. But they've done a great job, and they send out a weekly video of updates and kind of behind the scenes and in the factory, and the community is really intrigued by this. We also see this, one other sector that we're very involved in, or that we have some companies in, is space. People who love space. And so, this is another type of community that really rallies behind companies to help them succeed.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm kind of biased here, but I do love the idea of users and customers owning a small piece of the company that they're building. I think for all the reasons you mentioned, not the least of which is brand loyalty, not the least of which is helping your growth strategy and expansion, right? If you own a small piece, you're incentivized, encouraged to share that with folks that you care about. But more than anything, I just love the idea of letting them come along for the ride in the wealth creation. These are the folks that are making your company valuable, and giving them the opportunity to participate in the upside. Obviously, again, super biased, but I love that you're open to that strategy.
And it aligns everyone. I think it's great.
Absolutely. Another question that's kind of in that vein is, it was less of a question than a comment, but it's great to see a female leader of fintech business. Love that feedback. What's your culture and mantra? Ooh, on the spot mantra question. Uh-oh.
So, I think it's funny. I don't really think about this very much. I think, our company, everyone at the companies, we're very close, even though some of us have worked together for a very long time. Some of us haven't and are new to the team. But the biggest thing that we always talk about is, let's just be honest, about what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and let's course correct. So, I think it's better to ask the questions, course correct, and get to the right place quicker. So I think we have a pretty good culture of everyone being able to ask questions and not feel like there's any dumb questions, or anyone feeling like they're asking. Noted by me not knowing what ARS is. But because a lot of us have been around for a long time, and so that's really, we have a lot of fun together, but we also love to dive in and learn new things. And we're constantly learning every day.
That's great. Always learning, always growing, shortening the feedback loop. I didn't know what our ARS was either, so I'm going to join you in that party. There's an acronym for everything, though. There could be, there's a lot of ARSs, I imagine. Last couple of minutes and last couple of questions. Somebody asked, and I'm going to field it. Is there a limit to how much we can invest via your current Reg CF offering on Netcapital that you just launched? The answer is yes. Well, I guess the answer is it depends. For accredited investors versus non-accredited investors, the non-accredited investors are capped, and the rules are very specific. You can go ahead and click the little question mark during the invest flow, and it'll guide you through what your maximum is. But it depends on your net worth and your income. So depending on how, what those two numbers are, that'll determine what you're allowed to invest across all platforms in any given year. So definitely do keep an eye onto that. And then accredited investors are treated differently, but I'm gonna go ahead and just check that one off. This might be the last question, and then I'd love to give you a chance at the end, Sherry, if we don't get any more questions, for some closing remarks. So I like to ask you, why is now the perfect time to go to netcapital.com and invest in Rialto. So I'm giving you a little bit of sneak preview there. But this question, before we get there, can you give us a bit of background on how you got to your current valuation and what are your company's goals for valuation over the next 3 years? That one we're going to be thoughtful about from a regulatory standpoint. Or do you have shorter or longer exit plan for Rialto Markets you can share with us? So exit strategy broadly.
Yeah, exit strategy broadly, I will speak to. So broadly, we, having come from large capital markets firms, we and knowing how the trajectory of the equities market went in proliferation, consolidation, we definitely believe that there's going to be this proliferation consolidation again. And we're already seeing some of this. I mean, you probably have seen a lot of war chest building and a lot of discussions in the marketplace around private markets. And so we definitely think that 2022, 2023 is going to be a very active time in private markets. We are focusing on really establishing our space in the market. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, we've got the primary market in specifically the self-hosted solution. 2021 was really about building the pipeline. 2022 is about monetizing the pipeline and really scaling that pipeline. And so that's really what we're focused on. And so that's really when I talk about, our broad exit plan, I think there will be a lot of combinations that will come about over the next 12 to 24 months. And I think that's going to be in the industry broadly.
I love talking with folks that are familiar with heavily regulated industries. That felt like a great answer. That was a delicate one. That was a great answer. No, thanks, Sherry. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. I really do appreciate you, Sherry, for coming on. In these last couple of minutes, can you please, as I alluded to, can you tell us a little bit about why now is the perfect time to go to netcapital.com and learn more through the offering page and maybe hit that invest button to join the Rialto family?
Yeah, it's such an exciting time for private markets. I really think that we're at a moment in terms of the timing for private markets, for awareness, and for the regulatory structures, if you will. And so I really think that Rialto is quite well positioned in all of those spaces. I often view us as sort of in the middle of a Venn diagram of private markets and digital securities. And both of those spaces are quite white hot at the moment. And so I think this is really an interesting moment in time. And that's why I think this is a great time to invest.
Well, with that being said, we started on time. We're going to finish on time. Thank you so much for all the attendees and your fantastic questions. Come to the next one. Ask more good questions. That's what we live for. That's what we're here for. And I really want to thank you so much, Sherry, and your entire team at Rialto for joining, answering these questions. It's a pleasure to learn more. And I hope that everybody really walked away with some new tidbits of knowledge about what you're building with Rialto.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone's time and appreciate you, Eric. Thank you.
Oh, I should add, I almost lost it there. This has been recorded as always. It's going to be uploaded to the Netcapital YouTube account. I imagine it will also be shared by the team at Rialto. They're really good about doing that. I'm adding a link to the Netcapital YouTube account now into the chat. Love the thank yous coming in. Appreciate it. Some people are saying they learned so much tonight. So yes, that has been recorded. It will be uploaded. Please feel free to catch anything that you might have missed, and do share that generally with anybody that you think might be interested in learning more about Rialto and potentially investing. So that is in there. Feel free to check that out.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Bye now, everyone.
Bye.